November 13th. November 13th is the celebration by the Orthodox Church of St. John Chrysostom, the Golden Mouth. Probably one of the most revered saints. He is considered to be, especially amidst those who love theology, a very popular person. He is the author of the liturgy that is most commonly celebrated together with the liturgy also of St. Basil the Great. He is a man who has tremendously contributed to theology. He's one of the three hierarchs, and that gives him another feast day where he's also celebrated on I believe it's the 30th of January.
Yes.
And so St. John, a bishop, he's a very fiery character. He was originally born he's born in Antioch, and this is again that question of what are Greeks doing in Syria, right? So Billy, maybe you could give us a little backdrop on the Greeks in Syria, Antioch.
Sure. Helios Ioannis o Chrysostomos, as George said, St. John Chrysostom was born in the Greek province of Syria in Antioch, which is one of the patriarchates of Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire. So the five ancient patriarchates of Christianity. It's Antioch, Jerusalem, Alexandria, Rome, and Constantinople. Now, those were Greek lands. They were ancient lands. That city was named after a general of Alexander the Great. Right? One of the successors, Antiochus. Mm-hmm. He's the one that forms that city and many others around him. And it continues on to be a Greek and indigenous other people that lived there in the area, Assyrians, Jews, other Levantine people that lived in that region, but it was a predominantly Greek city up to Byzantine times. So
very interesting.
Yeah, and to this day, there's a lot of Greeks still there, and a lot of Greek Orthodox Christians as well.
Absolutely, very interesting point to make. So let's talk about Saint John. His feast day, by the way, his date of death is not the 13th of November. For some reason, it was moved from the 13th of September, which it originally was, and actually the Catholic Church still commemorates him on that date. But just a little fine point, because usually the date of a saint's celebration is the date of death, and occasionally it's also the transference of the relics, but essentially that's our discovery of the relics. But in this case, it's a little bit different. So moving on, basically he started as a reader, went up the ladder of the clergy, and ended up basically being a very talented orator. He was a person who really, if you find yourself falling asleep at a sermon, it was not inspired by St. John, because St. John's sermons got so much attention, as it was said, that he can make rocks cry. He had an amazing ability to command people to a sense of repentance through his words, and of course that can only be done by a truly holy person. I think that's in St. John we see a person who knows when to be stern and when to, really make a point, but do it in a truly Christian manner. I think that's what was one of the great differentiators, because there are people who just like to preach, like this.
Yeah.
But he knew how to be stern. He knew how to be firm, kind of like Christ in the when he walked into the temple and saw all of the people trying to profit. And speaking of that subject, one of his main points was that he was very big on, from the one side, almsgiving, right, not abusing material your material situation, and also he always was big on people being modest, people being when they come to church, for them not to get too dressed up and everything else. He was very big on people showing
makeup.
No makeup, and
clothing.
Which other saints, by the way, of the Russian Church also. I mean, not just the Russian Church, of all of Orthodoxy. Other saints have taken a lot of inspiration from Saint John in that regard. So, very, very interesting person.
We're talking about 1,500 years ago. Right? It's the same issues that happen. People go to Sunday church and they dress up in their finest, but they also for gossiping and stuff that they should be wearing in church. And he was against that. He wanted more humble people.
Right.
People to be dressed more modestly and appropriately for church services. He was also a true philosopher. He was one of those ancients that was in the middle of the cusp of the transition between philosophy and Christianity. So he was very knowledgeable, just like Saint Basil and all the three hierarchs, together. But he did. Somebody like that will make some enemies.
Yeah, because he didn't have a problem telling off monastics, clergy, and not just them, but people who had a lot of influence and pull in society. He had no problem telling somebody off if he felt that they were not. They were being, behaving in some way,
like the emperor or the empress and other nobles,
right? And he went up to the empress Eudoxia, and he basically called her out, and that was the final straw. For a bit, they tried to actually banish him.
Yes, this was under the era of Emperor Arcadius and Empress Eudoxia. And he had spoken against Arcadius a few times, and actually he did banish him once, and then the people rebelled, and in 48 hours they almost caused riots, and the emperor had to call him back and reinstate him. He became Patriarch of Constantinople.
Yes.
And he's the one that actually brought Constantinople prestige, and he kind of made it the capital of the other patriarchates, because it was the capital of the empire, but at this time it wasn't quite yet the capital of also the, it hadn't surpassed Rome or Antioch yet, or Jerusalem or Alexandria. It was under his reign that Constantinople became the dual center of religion and political power.
Yes, and so every time, much of the time when you're hearing a divine liturgy, it was under his authorship, and he is commemorated at the liturgy for that all the time. So Saint John, the Golden Mouth,
Chrysostomos,
yes. We remember him at all of his liturgies, and a true iconic bishop and leader of the church who knew how to inspire people, even if that got them upset. So remember that as a good example.
He cared about the poor, and he was a defender of orthodoxy.
Absolutely. He was a defender of orthodoxy, including in his apologetics.
And a doctor of the church.
Yes, absolutely.
That's one of his other titles.